Heather Mcdonald has got the juicy scoop. When you're on the road, when you're on the go, Juicy Scoop is the show to know. She talks Hollywood tales, her real life Mr. Segment serial data and serial sister. You'll be addicted and addicted fast to the #1 tabloid real life podcast. Listen in, listen up. Whoop whoop. Heather Mcdonald, Juicy Scoop.
Hello and welcome to Juicy Scoop. Well, I've got a great show for you today. I have a little bit leftover juicy topics that made me pee in my pants talking to Brandy and Julie that I saved for you that you're going to listen to. And then I have a great interview that I also recorded a little while back. It's so juicy. It is about some of the greatest Hollywood stories that have ever been told by a hilarious storyteller and Hollywood insider, Scott Nathan. So get ready for a fun, juicy episode. And don't forget to go to heathermcdonald.net. Get your tickets to all of my summer shows with some of your favorite Juicy Scoopers. Go there now. That's also where you sign up to be an extra, get the extra Juicy Scoop, as well as Patreon, all at heathermcdonald.net. Let's go. This girl said she has the world's largest feet, and she has to fend off perverts.
How big are her feet? Does it show?
This is how New York Post
Doesn't
writes
look
it.
that big.
She uses her huge flippers to kick pervs to the curb. A Texas woman with the world's biggest feet. So she's constantly inundated with requests from creepy guys who want to purchase pics of her Titanic trotters.
She needs to do an OnlyFans, honey.
These are her feet.
I still well, not
Are they the biggest feet of a woman?
Do they have a rash? I mean, maybe
why are toes so
maybe
spread apart? Like, what's going on in between her first and second toes?
What's going on here?
Well, she broke the record this past fall for having the biggest feet. Her shoe size is 18.
Whoa!
Like her feet her shoes
right
are bigger than
foot-
Shaquille O'Neal.
Wow.
A woman.
A
Okay.
woman size 18. So who even knows if they broke? I mean, my son has a size 14, and he has to order his shoes. They don't really
Which
carry
son?
14. Drake. They don't carry. They only carry. Most stores like Vans and stuff don't have 14.
Wow.
Anyway, she broke the previous record of a woman with a size 16, and she's proud to have such big feet. Her Instagram has always been flooded with pervs, and the bigger the feet, the sweeter the treat, said one comment. She is a Christian and thinks it's morally wrong to sell pictures of her feet, so she doesn't have any plans to do that. Well, you're stupid. And she thinks it is disturbing. I don't. And she has to work with a custom show builder in London, and each pair costs about $400. So she started a GoFundMe. No, just sell your giant feet pics.
You have to do it. It looks
And
like she's
buy
been
as
taking
many-
taking it in between those first two toes. I think she's been getting some action
Oh,
in there.
like they're putting their penises in that toe?
Yeah. I think that's
Yeah.
the gap.
Well, maybe she puts her own penis.
Do you imagine the pedicure lady? Like, your feet wouldn't even fit in those little tub
No.
things.
She
Oh
has to
my
get like
God.
the biggest razor, like to
Yeah.
shave off.
Ugh.
They don't even look that big in this picture. I wish there was
Is
a Coke
she
can next
British?
to it. We need
Yeah, I know,
something
you
for
can't
like
tell.
size. You know what I mean? Or what's that called? Where you can tell the two different sizes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like
Like a comparison of
Perspective,
sizes.
yeah.
Right. Well,
Put a
one's
Coke can
always
there.
bigger.
Can you
the
imagine?
right foot is bigger.
Oh, it's like my boobs.
Yeah.
One's way
One
bigger.
is bigger. One
The
is,
right one is so much bigger than the left one.
Oh.
Crazy. I get emails
feel-
all the time.
Yeah.
Do you feel like
your Titanic
My
trotters.
Titanic trotters.
feel like
titties.
someone is a
And-
little jealous?
And I will take pictures of them and sell. You know, I don't mind. Mm,
This girl says I got two vaginas.
sorry.
I have two vaginas. But I use one for porn and the other for my husband.
Does she mean her booty and her?
No, she actually has two vaginas.
Oh,
So it's just, another New York day. Oh, this is Daily
Two
Mail.
full vaginas?
Yeah, she said I had two vaginas.
With a womb?
Yeah. So what's the
Two
deal is-
vaginas.
Yeah.
Two clitorises, two holes, two vulvas, two wombs,
two lips.
two
No.
forelips.
Wait, did you
So
do
she
notes
could
on this?
carry
here.
babies on
Okay,
each
here's
side?
The deal. Here's the deal.
Oh my god.
Annie did the research.
Wow.
She has two sets of ovaries and two vaginas.
Oh my god.
She earns $12K a week on Pornhub and OnlyFans. Well, tell that Bigfoot girl to join you. You can do
Yeah.
a collab. She's from Australia. She's a married mother.
There you go.
She has one vagina for work and another for play, so she doesn't see it as cheating.
Uh-huh.
She was so anxious about sex for so long that she avoided it. and then she only lived with her dad, and she didn't have anyone to ask because she didn't know what to say because she was going to ask her dad about 2 vaginas, and she
Yeah, like 2 periods.
she
It's kind of
shows it
annoying.
off on OnlyFans.
Ugh.
Her urethra is lower than usual, and then the vaginas are on either side.
Just a double
Oh.
tampon
Oh
it.
my God. Do you think the period comes at the same time or is it
So
different
this
times?
happens when 2 separate ducts fail to join together and affects a 0.3% of women. Many people with the condition are left infertile, but she has had 2 babies.
Out of both sides?
She has to use a condom. No, just the one side. The other side is just for porn. God,
How does
Brandy.
she decide? Oh, because
She has to
use
use a
protection on
condom
that side.
in the
Okay.
other vagina when she is pregnant to avoid getting pregnant twice.
She should be always using condoms on the other side.
She finds her condition fascinating and empowering.
Well, true to form, as everyone in Australia, she's
Wow.
completely beautiful.
Yeah. Right.
So lest anyone think that she's popular on porn just because of her 2 vaginas. Nope, she's completely pretty.
I know when I went to Australia, I couldn't believe how attractive people were.
They're so, and you can always tell too. Like
Nobody's
they have a
unattractive.
look. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? Like they all, like if you think of Margot Robbie,
Yeah.
and then like
No,
It's
but
the look of 2 vaginas,
just-
guys.
just
How about that? It's the look of 2 vaginas. All right. That's what I say. Oh, hey, good day to you. Hey, guys. I got 2 vaginas. Don't mind if I do. One's for porn, one's for my husband. He likes it. He's not cheating. He says, what's in that one? I go, you don't want to know. It's from work today. Didn't clean it out earlier before I got home.
Let me go douche real quick before I put
Yeah.
some shrimp on the barbie.
I mean, how much tampons did she go through? Just all of it. It's
Oh yeah, well then she would have 2 tampons. Period. Oh,
My
well,
one
y'all-
vagina likes tampons. My other one likes pants. So I use a maxi pad on one side and a tampon on the other side. I don't mind it. Why not? Know what I mean, guys?
I totally agree.
Sometimes it's just how it is.
You guys been to Australia a bunch of times, huh?
no,
Which
we've only been
ones?
once, and New Zealand, but we like love it.
Yeah, I've been twice, but it was for work when we did Chelsea and we went to Sydney.
But
And
didn't you like it?
Beautiful. Just
Yeah.
just clean, beautiful,
Fun.
attractive
People are fun.
people, and just nice people.
Yeah,
They
well-
speak my language,
Yeah.
English, so it's not scary for me as a dum-dum who hasn't traveled a lot.
You're gonna start though.
Yeah.
I
Because
know,
you're
you're
travelista
taking-
now.
You're taking me, right?
I
On all of our
well,
trips.
I know that you are. I can see that your trajectory where you're going to be all off into all the European lands.
Absolutely. As always, you guys, remember to go to julieandbrandy.com to follow their podcast and Patreon and all their good stuff. And now for really juicy, juicy stories straight from inside Hollywood with my new friend, Scott Nathan. Hello and welcome to Juicy Scoop. I'm very excited to talk to a brand new guest, one of my wonderful discoveries from TikTok. Scott Nathan, I talked about you with hilarious Fortune Feemster. Maybe it wasn't very flattering, but you have a really good sense of humor
Thank you.
and incredible stories about Hollywood. You're a famous photographer, and I just really like your attitude.
Thank
So
you.
welcome to Juicy Scoop. Thank
Thanks.
you for being brave enough to come.
Thank you for having me. And Fortune, if you're out there, and I know you are, thanks for making fun of my face. I didn't put on pants for 3 days after that. But
All right, so Scott, just give us a little background. Where did you come from? How did you fall into this Hollywood life with such great knowledge about the world?
all right, so I grew up in the North Shore of Chicago, in jaded suburbia. Any John Hughes film you've ever seen, that's where I grew up.
Oh, okay.
Ferris Bueller, Risky Business,
That was your life.
just like white bread America.
Uh-huh.
It was a very normal, suburban childhood, rode our bikes everywhere and, went fishing and climbed trees. And I remember when I discovered this place, we went on
LA, you mean.
well,
Hollywood?
yes.
Uh-huh.
So circuitously. So we went on a family trip to California. So we flew into San Francisco, did all that stuff, the Fisherman's Wharf, the Alcatraz, all that stuff.
Yeah.
And then we took a road trip. My dad rented this big Lincoln Continental, which I'm giving my age away. And
Yeah.
I think we're contemporaries.
Yeah.
So we're driving this land yacht down PCH, and we took this, and I remember coming down and seeing, it's the dead of winter. It was like Christmas vacation. I'm seeing palm trees and smelling jasmine in the air, and we're driving down PCH. I see all these beautiful beaches, and we took that left onto Sunset Boulevard, and I see all these gated homes and orange trees, and I'm like in the back seat, and I'm like, "Excuse me, why don't we live here? And, Chicago in the winter,
Yes.
love you, Chicago, but it's like a Warsaw post office. It's dark, it's depressing, and it's miserable. And my parents said in that moment that they remember that moment, and they knew that someday they would eventually lose me to this place.
Oh, okay.
And we stayed at this hotel called the Westwood Marquis, which is now the W in Westwood over by UCLA.
Right.
And it reminds me, do you remember
How old were you?
I was probably 9 then.
Okay.
And do you remember that movie, The People versus Larry Flint?
Yes, of course.
So there's this amazing
Love.
Yeah, there's this amazing moment that cuts from the first to the second act of the movie where Woody Harrelson says to the guy who plays his brother, he goes, "We need to move to a place that accepts perverts." And it wasn't exactly the same. And then there was a smash cut to like a helicopter shot swirling over Wilshire Boulevard over the Flint building.
Right.
And I never really felt like I fit in growing up in Chicago. It was very like preppy and square, and in my 20s I had hair down to here and rode a Harley Davidson, and I worked in music there. I was a concert promoter, and I worked for a music publishing company, and I'd run into my friends who were like suits, and they'd be like, "What are you doing? It's the middle of the day. What are you riding a skateboard to lunch for?"
Yeah.
And it just wasn't. And then I moved here, and I was just like, okay, everyone's weird. These are my people.
Okay, so you moved here at what age?
I moved here in March of 1994, just before the Northridge earthquake. So that would have put me at about 28.
And did that scare you, the earthquake?
No, because I actually, everyone said I was so lucky. I missed the earthquake. I had to fly back to Chicago for 14 hours to go to a court date, which is probably a story for another time. And I missed it. And the earthquake turned out to be the best thing that ever happened to me, because I had just moved here. I had no money. I was couch surfing. I was moving from one friend to the next, and probably at the beginning of wearing out my welcome.
Okay.
Then the Northridge earthquake hit, and my friend's dad had just built this big mansion on Mulholland Drive in one of those gated communities. And the house was, back after the earthquake happened, you either got a green tag, a yellow tag, or a red tag.
Right.
Red tag, uninhabited. Green tag, no problem. Yellow, needs repaired. His house got yellow tagged. And we nicknamed the house Hotel Beirut because it looked like it had gotten bombed, and it was pre 9/11, so that was our frame of reference for bombed places. So like six chimneys had fallen, and the pool cracked into the mountain. And my friend's dad was just like, "Scott, do you have a place to live yet?" And I said, "No, Jerry, I don't have a place to live yet." And he said, "Well, you could stay in the house, just keep an eye, make sure that the workmen don't steal the pool furniture." And I'm like, "That's fair." And all these celebrities lived in this gated compound. Like my first day,
So he was having people fix it, but he wanted one person to make sure.
He was real type A. He could never live with all that dust and construction.
Right.
So
but
he
was happy to have someone be on the property to keep it
exactly. So he rented a big house on the
Perfect.
Wilshire corridor because he can't handle dust.
Right.
So like I would figure I'll walk around the neighborhood. I'll check it out. So I'm walking around the neighborhood my first day, and I got hair down to here. And people probably thought, because I'm in this big mansion, that I was like in a band or something,
Yeah.
So I'm a polite Midwesterner. So I see a guy left his lights on in his driveway, and people don't ring each other's bells in gated communities, or really in LA in general.
No, actually, my joke is that I grew up here my whole life, but my joke in stand-up, because I started stand-up shortly after, or right around the earthquake, it was like, an earthquake is great because it's when you meet your neighbors. Like literally,
That's
nobody
exactly
knows.
what happened.
Nobody knows their neighbors until there's an earthquake, and and that's even happened in the 90s. So you see the lights.
So I'm walking around the neighborhood. I see someone left their light on the Mercedes, and I ring the gate, and I hear a very like suspicious hello, and I go, "Oh hey, it's Scott. I'm your neighbor. You left your light on in your car." And the guy goes, "Oh, that's so nice of you. Let me come down and say hello." And out walks a shoeless with a T-shirt and shorts, Wayne Gretzky.
Oh, okay.
He goes, "How you doing, man? I'm Wayne." And I'm like, I know. I was like, "I was at your first game against the Blackhawks in Chicago." He's like, "Really? You're a hockey fan?" I'm like, "Yeah." And so he was incredibly nice. And I'd walk the neighborhood at sunset because it's a beautiful place. And like Paula Abdul and Emilio Estevez lived up the street, and Isaac Tiger, the Planet Hollywood guy, lived there. And Shaquille O'Neal, who I never saw, but apparently he had the house down the street. And Chris McCarron, the winningest horse jockey of all time, random. He
Yeah.
lived up the street, and Vanna White and George Santopietro, they lived there. And it was all this like funny little neighborhood. And I was so broke at the time. Like I didn't even have gas money to go down the hill to Ventura to get gas. So there was a couple month period where I was pretty much living off avocados and oranges on the trees. But my skin looked great.
So then when do you start to make some money to buy some protein?
So then, well, first, I worked in music in Chicago. So that was my plan, was to continue that.
Being
So
a concert promoter and
I was a concert promoter, and I worked in like the music publishing version of A&R. So I was working with songwriters and artists. And my plan, I'd kind of done everything you could do in Chicago. I worked for an affiliate of Warner Brothers, Warner Chappell Music. And this was kind of a golden age in Chicago, too. It was like when the Smashing Pumpkins were just coming up, and Material Issue and Liz Phair. And Chicago was kind of hot, but I had done everything you could do there. So I wanted to get a job, and I figured, I was, fairly successful in Chicago. So I thought getting a job would be really easy here. Well, it wasn't. And I'm kissing frogs, and nobody's hiring me. And then Napster happened. Remember that?
oh, where the music all changed.
So Napster was an app, and no one had to pay for music anymore. Everybody was stealing it. It was started by that guy Sean Parker, who is one of the Facebook guys. Thanks for that too, by the way. And then I kicked and screamed, and eventually I got a job with Atlantic Records, which I think lasted for 3 weeks. And then I got laid
Why?
off.
Oh, because
I never got an answer why, but I assumed it was just that everyone was getting laid off.
okay.
The music business was dead to rights. And it was before Steve Jobs came up with iTunes and 99 cents and
okay.
the beginning of saving the music business. So I'm like, what am I going to do? I need to keep the lights on. I mean, I didn't even have lights at this point, but I had to figure out something to do with my life. So I was just like, well, Napster, this internet thing is new. And this other kid I grew up with, my friend Parker, who is a screenwriter who had brief success until he wrote a movie that everybody hated called Super Mario Brothers with Dennis Hopper and Bob Hoskins, and he basically never worked as a writer again. But he was a brilliant artist, and he was a great art director at Leo Burnett and a few other advertising agencies. I'm like, you're a great designer. I'm pretty good at talking to people. I'll bet we could, these website things are new. I'll bet you I could convince people in the movie business that their movies need websites. And he goes, give it a go. Because he didn't have any money either. And he said Dennis Hopper used to hit him in the head with the script every morning, yelling at him how bad the script was, which, to be fair, it was a terrible script and a terrible movie. But, we all got to eat. So Parker and I started this web design agency. And we did a ton of websites, and not just in the movie and TV business, but also in the fashion business. And it was rocking. It was doing great. And this was the golden age of websites. Now websites.
Everybody needed a website, yeah.
And you could charge
and it was expensive.
and
Nobody else knew how to do
everything had to be coded by hand.
Yeah.
So you could charge a lot of money. So it's just like, I got I was working for Universal a lot. I was working for Disney a lot, and they were paying like, $125,000 for a movie website, and then we're getting these freelancers to do them for $3,000, $4,000, $6,000, and I'm now suddenly again eating in restaurants and playing golf and able to get my own place. So that's kind of how all that started.
Okay, so then how did you then get into the commercial world? Because you were like a big commercial guy. And I think I could totally see why, because as a kid, I had an agent, all my siblings, my two sisters and I, we had agents. And
so you were a kid actor.
Yes, but I was
Okay.
very unsuccessful.
Yeah.
But my sister was more successful. She was blonde, blue-eyed, and at that time, that's what they wanted. But the thing that every agent wanted was a redhead. A redhead worked. It was so rare.
Still does.
Yeah. And I actually have a friend whose daughter was a natural redhead, and she got so angry because at one point, her competition was starting to dye their hair. The moms were dyeing their 6-year-olds' hair red so that they, could be that one redhead.
One of my agents told me we're the only white people that still work in commercials. And it's because it's spot color. Because if you're doing a group of people at an office, you need the black guy, you need the Asian lady, you need the ginger.
Yeah.
And there's just a lot of gigs for redheads. So it all happened. I was through. It was all through a photographer friend of mine. It was this guy Davis Factor. Do you know him?
I've heard the name.
So
but
Davis and his brother Dean were Smashbox Studios, Smashbox Cosmetics.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And we had just finished playing golf over at Mountain Gate, and he said there's a party at 5th and Sunset Studios. So I said, okay, let's go there. So we're a little like sweaty in golf clothes, but back then I was going through this phase where I just felt like dressing like a really tacky 70s golfer. It was just like a shtick of mine. I started with the plaid pants and the big boat sail collar shirts. It was just to be funny. And we walk into this party at 5th and Sunset, and this woman who talks like a drag queen, but she's like a blonde lady from Pasadena. She comes up to me and she's like, "Oh, sweetheart, you are like geek chic." And I was like, "Thanks." And she's like, "No, you were like a super nerd." And I'm like, "Can you leave me alone, please?" And she's like, "You should sign with my agency." Now I was just starting photography, and I was like, "Oh, you represent photographers?" She's like, "No, I represent actors." I said, "Listen, lady, I will never ever be someone with a headshot." She goes, "Why not?" I said,
How old are you at this point?
I'm in my 30s.
Okay.
And she's like, "Why?" And I said, "I've just never wanted to have a career where the insult could also be the occupation, like shut up, you effing actor," which is, a frequently thrown around thing. Whenever someone says something dumb, you're just like, "Shut up, actor."
Yeah.
And then I blew her off. And then I see her a week later. I'm like, "Oh my God, here's the drag queen talking lady again." And she's like, "Honey, did you change your mind? You gonna sign with my agency?" I said, "No, listen, I'm not an actor. I'm not even an extrovert. Like, I am a weird, shy, dorky person. I'm not an actor. I will never be an actor." And then one of my other friends knew who she was, and he goes, "You should sign with her agency." I said, "Why? I don't know how to act." And he said, "Listen, you can make tons of money and you can get health insurance." I said, "Hold on a second. Did you just say health insurance?"
It's the ultimate flex.
Yeah.
To say that you have health insurance.
Oh, it's like health insurance? No way. Oh, all right, fine. I'll give it a go. So I said, "Do I have to get a headshot?" And she goes, "Yes, you have to get a headshot." So Davis was shooting, I think it was Jennifer Love Hewitt for the cover of Premiere Magazine. He was like, "I have a shoot tomorrow. Stop by the studio. I'll shoot a couple rolls on you." So I said, "All right." So I went when they were on lunch break. I just jumped in the light that Jennifer was in. Davis shot 2 quick rolls on me. And I didn't mean to be a dick, but I was such a dick that I didn't even process the film. I took the exposed film and I drove over to her office at her agency. And I just put them on her desk and left. And she was really nice and believed in me, I guess. And she processed the film and had headshots made. And she sent me out on an audition. And the first commercial audition she sent me on was for Toyota. And we had to wear these like Lakers warm-up suits, the warm-up suits. And they have the breakaway pants.
Yeah.
So the guy goes, "Okay, so here's the setup. You're going to rip off the breakaway pants and you're going to be wearing a red Speedo bathing suit." And I said, "I'm out." He goes, "What do you mean you're out?" I said, "I'm not. You're not videotaping me in a Speedo with these pasty ginger legs." He's like, "Really?" And I said, "Yeah, I'm out of here." And I just left. But I felt bad because the agent was nice. And I said, "Listen, I really like that you believe in me and you're a nice person, but I'm not cut out for this." And she goes, "Sweetheart, before you quit, just promise me you'll go on a couple more." And I said, "Fine, I'll go on a couple more." So the next day I went on an audition for, I think it was Dell Computers. And it was the easiest audition in the world. I literally was sitting at a desk, clicking a mouse, looking at the screen, and I booked it. And it was a huge national network commercial, and I made $65,000 from it. And I was on for about 1.5 seconds. I should pull it up here. It was literally click, click, click. And I'm like, wait, money's falling from the sky. There's money coming in the mailbox every day. And I'm like, I think I could be an actor. Yeah, sure. So I because I didn't care, I just went on a bender. And
It's like crazy because the amount of effort that just to get a commercial agent to book anything. I think I only booked one thing in like a couple years. And I actually got dumped by the commercial agent the day I got my first sketch show. And that day that I got the sketch show, they sent me a letter saying, "We're dumping you because you've like not booked anything." And I used to think about like, God, how do they make any money? There's like 5 people working here and I don't book anything. Like, are people really booking stuff? But I guess, you get someone like you. And it's amazing that like people work so hard on it and they take acting classes, how to be a good commercial actor.
And that's the problem.
And you feel so bad about yourself when you don't get it. And it really is so random and so not personal and so not about talent.
Nothing at all. Anyone know? Look, I've directed commercials now, and I always used to look at the people at the callback as adversaries.
Yes.
When really they just want to go to lunch. They want to book the person and get the hell out of there. They're rooting for you.
You know, that's so interesting because I said that it took me so long to realize in any job that, you know, when you go and you're, you know, especially when you're young and you're trying to make it, whether it's acting or any job, you feel like the person is going to, is an adversary, doesn't want you to do well. I'm like, no, they want the person to walk in to be the one.
I want you to be the first one.
They want you to check
book
off,
you
and be done.
And get out of there and go to lunch.
Done. And so it's like, I wish I would have had that attitude earlier because it would have made life so much easier.
I was so lucky that, so you know that actor Rex Lee, the really funny Asian guy from Entourage?
Yeah.
Plays the gay guy?
Yes.
So he was a session runner at, I think, Ross Lacey. He was one of those big casting directors. He was the session runner, the guy in the room that tapes people.
Yeah.
You know, when he was a journeyman trying to make it as an actor. And I choked. I choked in the room. I'm like, I'm not going to do that. I'm not cut out for this. He's like, sweetheart, just stop. Just slow down. We're going to do this as many times as we have to get it right. And I still run into him once in a while. And I'm like, I would never have kept going if it weren't for you, Rex, because he was so kind and so nurturing. And that's, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
I booked 40 commercials as an actor.
40?
40. Because I didn't care. Because they'd be like, it's going to be like an hour wait. And I'd be like, well, then I'm leaving. And they're like, okay, you can come in next. Because I just didn't care.
Oh, my God.
And that's the way the universe works.
Yes.
It always greases the palms that don't need grease.
They can smell desperation.
And I don't like it.
And if you have the desperation, it's hard to hide. Even if you think you're hiding it.
They know when you're hungry and they don't give it to you.
Yeah.
So, and that's why everything I've tried to manifest, they're like, no. But the things I don't give a shit about, I always get.
So you call it reverse manifestation?
Yeah.
I used to call it the anti-secret. Like, because the secret,
The
people
secret,
talk about, the
yeah.
secret is the same type of thing. And I would do this thing where I would just, it wasn't totally anti-secret. It was like, I'd see somebody like me that's maybe a few years older than I am on pursuing the same thing. And I would be like, well, I don't want to be her. I don't want to be that at 35. Whatever her life is, that's not what I want.
Yeah.
And so I would do a little bit, it's like a weird thing, but I would kind of, it's not an actual like name, but you know what I mean? I think sometimes people do that where you're like, that could be me if I don't make a left now, you know?
Yeah.
So, okay, continue. So while you're doing the commercial is when you then started to become a famous photographer?
Well, I really, look, I was always a photo enthusiast. I got my first darkroom at like 8 or 9 years old. And how that happened was my dad used to rent office space when he was first starting out. He rented this tiny office space about the size of this room, and he sold electrical supplies. But he happened to rent a building that was all photo. It was all photographers with studios. Kodak had offices there. Ford Models had offices. But why I liked going to work with him was there was this beautiful deco building with the manual elevators, but they had these silky smooth marble floors. And I used to like to skateboard up and down the hallways. So one day this guy stopped me in the hallway and he's like, hey, can I take your picture? And I was like, I don't know. I was told not to talk to strangers. And so he's like, no, I think I could use you as a model for some stuff. So I said, well, come back to my dad's office and you can ask my parents if it's okay. And my parents were like, do you want to do it? I'm like, yeah, sure.
So as a kid, you were the desirable redhead.
So I was very briefly a child model, but I really didn't like it. But what I really liked is what those guys were doing. So when I'd go to work, I'd go knock on all the photographers' doors and I'd be like, are you shooting today? No. Are you shooting today? No. Are you shooting today? Yes. I'm like, can I watch? They're like, if you sit on that stool in the corner and you don't say anything, you can watch me shoot. So I was obsessed with that. So my dad was like, what do you want for Hanukkah one year? And I was just like, I want, he's like, do you want an air hockey table? Do you want a bicycle? And I'd be like, no, I want a dark room. And my mother's like, he's not playing with dangerous chemicals. He's 8 or 9 years old. And my dad's like, he's not going to drink them. So they built me a dark room. And I was like a nerdy kid with a camera. And now everyone walks around taking pictures. But I was always taking pictures. But my parents are like, you are never turning pro. And I said, why? And they're like, because the arts are for imbeciles, which they're not wrong about. in hindsight. But they're like, they had my best interest at heart. They were like, you're going to be a doctor, you're going to be a lawyer, you're going to be a businessman. And if you think you're going to college for art, think again, because we're not paying for it. And I'm like, well, I don't want to go into the workforce. I still don't.
So did you go to college?
Yeah, I did. I went to University of Colorado Boulder.
Oh, but what was your major there?
Psychology, but only because it had the highest enrollment of women.
Oh.
I knew I was going to go in the music business. So I'm like, let's just get through this and make it last as long as we can. And we'll ski and we'll rock climb until they tell me I can't stay there anymore.
Okay. So, so you have some other great stories. So you're doing this now. One story I want to get into a little bit is how I discovered you,
All right.
which was your story of telling how you are the gold digger. How did you call it? The gold digger or the
whore whisperer.
The whore whisperer.
She called me that. I didn't call myself that.
Your friend did.
Yeah.
So tell the story.
Okay. So it all began at a photo shoot for a startup hair brand in Orange County. And that's like, I didn't plan on being the beauty guy, but I became the guy who shoots a lot of hair and makeup advertising. But we can get to it, but the first campaign I shot was I booked my broke friend Katy Perry to be the face of Too Faced Cosmetics. And as the saying goes, you chop down one tree and everyone thinks you're a lumberjack. So I became the beauty guy because that's where the work was. And I also don't ever allow people to be mistreated. My set policy is you're not allowed to yell at anybody on set unless they make more money than you. Therefore, you're not allowed to yell at anybody on set. So this was a busy day. I think it was a hair color campaign, and we had like 6 models to get through, which is a big day. So I'm like, look left, look right, look up, look down, next girl. And so I'm shooting, and then we get to the 3rd or 4th girl, and my assistant Stuart goes, I go, bring out the next girl. He goes, she doesn't want to come out. I go, what do you mean she doesn't want to come out? And he says, she's locked herself in the janitor's closet, and she's crying. I go, about what? He goes, so I go, take me to the closet. So I go to the closet and I'm like, Annie, it's Scott. She goes, you can't come in. I'm like, Annie, the show must go on. She's like, okay, you can come in. No one else. So I walk in and she's like, all her makeup's ruined. The mascara is streaming down her chest. She's wearing nothing but a nude thong. And I'm like, I don't know what to do. She's like, I feel bad for this kid, but she's also ruining the timing of my day.
Yeah.
So I sit down next to her and I'm like, what's wrong? And she says, that D-bag with the tattoos and the Range Rover cut off all my hair and called me the C word. And I go, what guy? And she goes, that tanning bed guy. And I go, oh no. And it's the client. So I'm like, I can't, what am I going to do? I can't.
So the client wanted her to have short hair for the shoot?
Didn't ask her cut all her hair off. Her hair was this beautiful, glorious hair. And in the modeling business, that's a huge deal. Like if you're cutting someone's hair more than 3/4 of an inch, there's always a huge pay bump and you get the permission of both the model and the agent. And this guy cut her hair to here. And I go, he didn't ask you? You didn't get paid for it? She goes, no. And he called me a C word. So I flip because I'm sometimes a ginger with a hot temper. And I walk out to the guy and I go, did you just cut all my model's hair off and call her the C word? He goes, yeah, you own that C for 10 hours. I'll do whatever the F I want to her. And I was livid and I just lost it. And I go, Stuart, pack up the trucks. We're out of here. And the guy goes, you leave and I'll effing sue you. And I'm like, oh, great. I'd been in one lawsuit before in my life and no one wins them except lawyers. And I won that lawsuit, but it doesn't matter. So he's like, you gotta finish it. So I'm like, all right, here's the deal. You're going to pay her for the day in a check, and that check, it better be gold or you will never get the files. And let's just get through it. So we did the shoot.
Without her. But
I had 4 or 5 other models. And we got through it. So the girl got my name off the call sheet. And she said, that was really nice of you. No one has ever stood up for me before. And I said, well, I'm happy to do it. That guy's a dick. I will never work for him again. And she says, I want to take you to lunch. And that always happens. It's just like, it's like, unless I have a job, I really don't want to put pants on. So she's like, come on, let me take you to lunch. And I was just like, you really don't have to. I was happy to do it. And I wish you well. And she's like, just please let me take you to lunch. It would make me feel better. So I take her to lunch at the place on my corner on Sunset. And we're sitting there, we're having just like a perfectly normal, and she told me that her parents were like traveling ministers. She grew up like very Christian in Central California. And we're like 40 minutes into lunch and we're about to ask for the check. And she goes, do you have sex? And I said, yeah, I guess, sure. So we go back to my place and we do some sex. And I figured I'll never hear from her again. And I was just like, all right, well, I guess doing a good deed sometimes pays off.
Yeah.
And that went on for years. I never knew where she was. And sometimes.
You mean you were like friends with a benefit?
Exactly.
Okay.
I mean, she was a young girl. Legal,
Yeah.
but young.
Yeah.
Too young for me. And I never knew where she was, and I'd look at her Instagram, and she was always in all those suspicious places that you wonder
The
about.
yachts
She was
and
on the yacht,
Dubai.
Kentucky Derby, Dubai, the Cannes Film Festival, TIFF, Sundance, all those places.
Okay.
So, and I'm without judgment. I'm just like, do what you got to do, girl. I don't care. And I'd hear from her once in a while. And when she did, I would be like, sure, come on over. It's all bonus for me. I'm under no illusion that I'm going to,
Marry her or something.
fall
Yeah.
in love with this girl that's too young to be my daughter.
Yeah.
So, so she says, hey, I'm coming. She calls me from Saint-Tropez. And
Another great
And she
place,
says, hey,
yeah.
I'm going to be in LA for a few days. Can I stay with you? And I'm like, yeah, you can stay with me. So she stays over Friday night, stays over Saturday night, sleeps over. And then she's like, I'm going to take a shower. I said, go ahead. And then all of a sudden I feel the sheets vibrating. I think it's my phone. So I reach for my phone, and hers is the same iPhone as mine, the big one without a case.
Yeah.
So I go to look at her phone, and it said, you have a message from Mohammed. It's seeking arrangements. And if you guys don't know what that is, look it
Oh,
up.
we know what that is. That's the Sugar Baby Sugar Daddy website.
Yeah, the sort of like the centerpiece, the
Yes.
big one. So so I'm just a wise ass. So she's getting ready, putting her makeup on. I go, hey, babe. And she goes, yeah, babe. I go, you have a message from Mohammed and seeking arrangements. She goes, oh my God, are you spying on me? Why are you looking at my phone? I said, I thought it was my phone. But I didn't want her to like storm out and slam the door. So
Yeah.
I wanted to feign interest in it. So I go, tell me how this works. I didn't really know back then. I
Yeah.
said, show me your hustle. She goes, you want to see my hustle? I said, I want to see your hustle. So she goes, watch this. So she calls the guy back, and the guy goes, hello, I am, he has a very thick Middle Eastern accent,
Right.
and says, I'm staying at the Peninsula Hotel. I would like to take you to lunch. And she says, it's $1,000 to take me to lunch. He goes, yes, no problem. And she goes, will you take me shopping too? He goes, yes, no problem. So she's like, all right, I'm not going to have sex with this guy, but she goes, I only have sex with like 3% of them, and they're only the hot ones that I would have sex with anyway. And I'm like, do whatever you got to do, babe. So she's like, can I come back in like 2 or 3 hours and we can hang out some more? So I said, sure. So true to her word, she's gone for a couple hours. She comes back. She's got one of those Saint Laurent bags, like for like high boots, I guess, the ones that are the size of this table.
Yeah.
And then like another medium-sized Saint Laurent bag, and then a small Gucci bag. And I go, you did all right. And she goes, yeah, I got you a present. And she hands me the Gucci bag. And I go, what's this? She goes, I got you a present. So I open it up, and it's this shoe box. And I open it up, and it's these, and it was these horrible Gucci slippers that were like velvet with the fur. Remember
Yeah,
those, when that was the rage? And I said, first of all, how'd you convince the Arab guy to buy you a pair of men's shoes?
Yeah.
And second of all, how'd you know I was a size 11? And she said, I told him it was my dad's birthday and I didn't have any money, and I checked your closet. And I'm like, you're pretty cool. And she's like, I said, are you getting rich from this? She goes, no, that's the problem. I'm only rich in luxury goods. I have like no money. I said, new rules. You're only going shopping at Barney's and Neiman Marcus. And she said, why is that? And I said, because those are the only places where you can get cash back on a return. So I forgot that I even told her that. Didn't hear from her for 3 months. Then she calls me and says, wait, I'm going to take some water. She calls me and she's like, Daddy, you're a genius. And I was like, why am I a genius?
Daddy.
And she says, do you remember when you told me to go to Barney's and Neiman Marcus for gifts? And I said, yeah. She goes, I've been returning stuff. I have like $35,000 in my bank account. You're like a genius. You should be like a coach for sex workers. You're like a whore whisperer. And that's where the title, The Whore Whisperer, comes from.
Do you have any other tips for sex worker whores, or just girls that like to date rich guys and make some money in the meantime?
Well, that is kind of turned into part of my brand, which is not was not what I'm after. Still not what I'm after. I'm just trying to be fun. So yeah, some of the advice I've given these girls is, do not let a guy take you shot. You do not want to go shopping at Prada. You do not want to go shopping at Gucci. You do not want to go shopping at Valentino or Louis Vuitton, even, for that matter. Why? Because those are non-depreciating assets. the appreciating liquid assets or the ones that never lose money, there's really only two brands in women's finery, and that's Chanel and Hermes. And Chanel bags, like them, don't like them, doesn't matter. They hold with the S&P 100. You know, they never lose money, and they quite often gain money. And during COVID, the supply chain got cut short, and you could take a Chanel bag that was 2 years old in decent condition and sell it for more than a new one.
Yeah.
So, I always tell them, you buy clothes with your own money, buy shoes with your own money, get bags from Chanel and Hermes. So a lot of people have done quite well with that advice. And then I'm just like, well, what if a guy wants to buy me a watch? And I'm like, you never take women's watches because they have no resale value. And if it is a watch, it has to be one of the big three Geneva brands. So like Patek Philippe, Audemars Piguet, Vacheron Constantin, or Rolex's Evergreen. Rolex is always blue water, but always get men's ones. And, men's watches for women are kind of in style anyway. So.
What about other jewelry? Like, what about, I just saw something about, how everyone has the gold Cartier bracelets.
I love bracelets.
But this guy said the fakes are so good now that you shouldn't buy those real Cartier gold bracelets
always
anymore.
Skip the love bracelet. Yeah. VCA always does well.
What's VCA?
Van Cleef and Arpels. So if you can get that, I always say skip diamonds unless they're branded. So unless it's Groff or Harry Winston, you're going to get pennies on the dollar for your diamond, unless it's massive and flawless. Even Tiffany. I mean, Tiffany, most of the stuff has no resale value and it's drecky. But if you get a big Tiffany, VS1, VS2 giant diamond, take that. But yeah.
I saw this other girl giving tips about how to act like you're really interested in a guy and take him shopping, but trick him into it. And so she was like, so you say, ooh, you're walking by and you go, ooh, I just want to go in this store for a minute and look at this something. Do you mind if I try this on and get your opinion? So you're not saying buy it for me or anything. And then you try it on and you're like, what do you think? Or you might even bring the guy, flirty with him, zip me up in the dressing room and have him, this is you haven't boned him yet, but making him think it. And then, and then you'll be like, well, that was nice, but no, I'm not getting it. And then he'll most likely insist on getting it. And, that's the way you get stuff.
And does it work?
Well, according to this girl, I thought the way she said it, I'm trying to remember all the stuff, but I thought it was, I thought it was pretty good how she was subtle about it. Because that's my question. If you're not on a sugar baby website and you're dating someone that can afford to buy you some stuff, but you don't want to appear like that's the only reason you're there, do you have any advice for that? Because you want to act like you're just not that girl, so that they keep liking you.
But here's the thing, from a male perspective, and I don't have this fetish, but
yeah.
But it is a big male fetish to save women, to shower women,
yeah.
and it's a flex of power. This is who I am. I can take you to eat here, and I can buy you this, and I can buy you that, and that's how they sort of, exhibit their power.
Yeah, I think for really rich guys, it's not at all like they're being taken or anything.
No.
Because that's what they want, and it is a flex, and they like it. And
it's a transaction they're comfortable with. To a really rich guy, giving a girl a pair of shoes from Gucci is like me giving you a candy bar. It doesn't mean anything to rich people. And they're happy.
But to that 25-year-old, to tell all her friends, oh my God, an $1,100 pair of Louboutins showed up at my door by his driver.
Yeah,
how hot and exciting is that? That girl is in love with you in a hot second. Yeah. I remember, this is funny, but this comedian Bert Kreischer said this. He goes, I got to a place in my life recently where I was able to have this car delivered, my dream car or whatever. And the car is there, and his wife of 20 years, who he has 2 kids with, comes home and she's like, oh, you got your car. Cool. That was it, and he's like, now imagine if I took a 25-year-old that I was on a second date with in this brand new car, how she would be taking photos, telling all her friends. And it's that's what it is. But like, if it's your wife of 5 years that you've accumulated the wealth with, and this isn't the first nice car that she's seen you get, and she has a nice car, it's like, well, no, I'm not going to go blow you in the garage right now.
That's right.
Because
that's right.
like, it's not that big of a thing.
Do you know about the car scam, the rich guy car
No,
scam?
do tell.
So this is a big move among celebrities and rich guys.
Okay.
Where they'll go take the girl to the Porsche dealer, Tesla, whatever it is.
Yeah.
Buy them the luxury car, and then then they don't have to buy them anything else. They just have to take them out to dinner, and then 3 months later, it turns out the whole thing was a lease under the guy's name, and they just send someone over to take it back. I've seen so many girls get hustled. So if a guy's telling you he's taking a car, you're like, title my name.
Yeah.
Or no deal. Because 9 times out of 10, you're getting scammed. I'm not going to name any names here because I hate getting sued. But there are some very famous celebrities who pull this scam.
And does
rappers,
the girl,
athletes.
Does the girl really not know? Because I would think I would be like, clearly, like, this isn't my car forever. But I might as well enjoy it for as long as I can and take my girlfriends around.
They don't ask. They see the car with the red bow around it from the dealer, and they're like, this athlete, bought me a Porsche.
Yeah.
And they really think it's theirs. So that's actually on one of my videos. I was like, car in your name or
but
no
also
deal and no leases.
They have to also know, because it's like, who's paying the insurance, the maintenance, all that. You would need that whole big package from Porsche, even if you were
Heather,
on the lease.
You're a Valley girl. I'm a Chicago guy. We didn't just fall off the turnip truck, but plenty of people in this town just fell off the turnip truck.
I guess especially if you're not here and you're like, I just fell into this like fancy Hollywood life. This is what I was meant to be. I'm so hot. This guy likes me. And what about shelf life of some of these girls? Like, where they're really living their life on their looks. And it's not their sparkling personality that they get invited to the parties. It's not because the guys love talking to them for hours. Do you think those women realize that?
I hope so, because beauty is a perishable good, we all want to age like first growth Bordeaux, but I can only speak for myself that I'm kind of aging like milk in the Texas sun. So, but hopefully they can convert it. Like, I know
Annie's from Texas. Go on. Yeah.
So like I know this one girl who was like a neighbor of mine, and she was all about it. She was shameless. She'd go out with these really old, really rich guys, and she knew the clock was ticking.
And with the really old guys, would she have to bone them, or were they so old she didn't have to, or it'd be a real quick Viagra thing?
She actually preferred. She said, because she's like, you date a rich guy in his early 30s, he's going to bang you for 3 straight hours. She's like, an old guy, if he can make anything happen at all, it's going to be all of 5 minutes.
Right. Yeah.
So that's why a lot of these sex
Time
worker
is money.
types, yeah, and they're just like, hopefully he'll, you don't want to eat his overcooked vegetables and be asleep by 7 p.m.
Yeah.
So, but this one landed one. I don't know how she did, but she's dating this older guy. She's living on a gated compound. They fly in his Gulfstream all over the world, and I'm kind of like a fairy godmother to these girls because they are so dumb, So like a lot of them, so I'm like, make sure you send me. They're like, he has a jet, and I'm like, send me a selfie of you, like make it like you want to be a selfie with the jet, but make sure you get the tail number in the frame. And they're like, why? And I'm like, explain it to you later. And there's this website called FlightAware. So she sent me a selfie, and I was just like, okay. It's not his plane. It's a rental. It's 35 years old, which, to be fair, I don't know about you guys. I don't own a 35-year-old Gulfstream either,
Or even to fly a chartered private. Who cares?
Yeah.
It's still private.
Right.
Yeah.
But I was just like, it's not his plane. It's a recent remodel, but this guy takes very good care of her. They live in a compound. She seems to really love him. He's made his money, so he's not at work all the time. They fly all over the place, and I don't know, some dreams come true, I guess.
So now, how old is this girl?
25.
And the guy's like, what, 60?
Late 60s.
Woof. Okay.
But a fit late 60s, like goes to the gym every day, late 60s. Like he's gray, but he's kind of shredded and has a lot of energy.
I mean, still though, that's 40 years.
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
So do you have any tips about, like, okay, it's been a year, honey, and I just want to make sure that, like, I'm not going to end up in an apartment with 3 friends in Pomona if you dump me or die or enter a coma and your kids are like we won't even let me to visit the hospital room. So
That's a
what do
tricky
you
one.
suggest for that?
How do you close? That's the question, right? Like,
I
how do
think
you,
this is what I would do, and I'm just thinking about it now, but I do think that it's so funny because just recently I said to Captain Sandy that a movie that changed my life. I was about 9 years old. It was with Victoria Principal. It was called The Mistress. Somebody just looked it up, and she was an actress, and she was the mistress, and she was so excited to tell her sugar daddy that she got a part in a soap, and that it's going to film next week. She finally booked a part, and I thought her life was so glamorous. As I'm watching this at 9, and it was that he said, no, you can't because we're going to New York and that's my only time with you and you're basically my employee or whatever. Anyway, he dies. The wife, she gets nothing. And then she has to become a regular hooker. I just remembered the ending of the movie. So, no, I was like, well, I don't think I want that. I think I would like to maybe pursue the talents God gave me, which is not being a hooker. But I do think there's something important in like, it taught me like, no, you've got to like say, hey, I want a condo in my name. I want something in my name. And I think that's what I would say. Like, can we buy a duplex or something? Or something that then I have some security because I'm not going to, I don't want to take your kids' money and I don't want them to hate me. And I believe there can be a heterosexual transactional relationship that can be beneficial to both and be fine.
Yeah.
Not everybody is going to have the most notebook worthy love story that, only one person and this and that, and you're on this world. And if this is what makes you happy and you're like, I don't need the most amazing sex of my life. I'm really thrilled to watch Casablanca with this old fart and, take my mom to Cabo and hang out with my nieces and whatever your case is. And he's nice and who cares? But also know that, it's not a regular marriage of two people that get married at 25.
But where's the line? I look at every ex-playmate friend and every ex-supermodel friend of mine who married a guy who looks like Alan Dershowitz, who lives behind gates in Brentwood Park.
Yeah.
And what's the distinction? That guy was never going to get a girl like this.
Right.
But she had what he wanted. He had what she wanted. And they actually do love each other. And look, the hot sex doesn't last forever. No matter who you're with. No matter how hot a girl is, if I don't like her or she bores me after 3 dates, I really don't want to hang out with her anymore.
Yeah.
Whereas I can certainly give up a lot of the looks department if I'm laughing all the time.
Right.
Because all the girlfriends I've ever had, people are like, you don't have a type. You went from like a 6'1" blonde to a 5 tall Chinese girl. And I'm like, I do have a type. My type is funny and that's it.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, that's so.
It's all a mosaic. It's a puzzle.
Yes. But I mean, it's obviously happens a lot, in certain cities and LA being one of them. And now that it's so out in the open with the sugar baby stuff, and even like on the TikToks where these girls like love to flex it, that like and even women flex like, I got married and I don't have to work. Like I just married so well and the guy's not old. And I just get to wear my Lululemons and get my hair done and have kids. And you should be jealous that I don't have to work. And I'm like, hey, that's fine too. But again, in 20 years,
it's rarely
you
free,
might
though.
feel different. It's rarely free.
My grandmother Goldie used to say, anybody who marries for money has earned it.
Yes, has never worked harder.
Yeah.
Or something like that. There's a saying like that. Yeah, because then it's going to be like, you're expected to have the meal or you're not, or you don't have the freedom to go out with your friends or, you don't have any comeback to it.
And there's always going to be an imbalance.
Yeah.
And usually, almost without exception, the person with the money has the leverage in the relationship. I dated one extraordinarily wealthy woman with the jet, with the whole thing. And she did love me, and I think the best way she could. But she was so used to everyone around her being a submissive. And I'm just not a submissive. She'd be like, go run this errand for me, go do this for me. And in the beginning, I thought it was cute. And then she'd start bossing me around and I would be like, no, I've been in the car all day. I'm not running another errand right now. Just let me relax right now. And then she'd hand me a Wells Fargo envelope and I'd be like, what's that? She'd be like, that's $10,000. Now go run my effing errand. And I'd be like, yes, ma'am. But eventually I just couldn't take being treated like the help anymore. And it was more to it than that.
Right.
But when people have like unlimited resources, it's sort of like fame. You know, when you're never told no. Like I remember when all those kids were like Lohan and going back further, Shannon Doherty, and all those kids were like wild animals running the streets of LA. If no one ever told me no from, you know, junior high onward, I would have probably turned into a miserable prick too. But
Right.
it's because I've had the shit kicked out of me so many times in life that I'm such a polite person now.
Yeah, and I also think, you know, if you're, you know, come from money and then you have all that, it is just your worldview. If your worldview is like, I was watching this other thing where there's like a trend going on, where people say, has anyone ever said, have you ever had a rich friend say something to you that made you realize how poor you are?
Give me an example.
And then people were like doing stitches, and this one kid, he was a young Jewish kid from upstate New York, and he's like, I got to go to this camp, but I got like a scholarship or something. But so I was like the diverse kid just because I wasn't super rich. But because he was white, everyone just assumed he was another upper whatever East Coast person. And they would be like, they'd be like, what are you doing this weekend? He's like, I'm going to my dad's. And he's like, oh, where does your dad have a home? He's like, what do you mean? It's just his home. No, but where's his summer home that you're going to for the weekend off? And he's like, just his apartment in Brooklyn or whatever it was. And it's like it's nothing wrong with those kids. But
No.
if that's all you know, it's like the thing when someone who has a private jet goes, oh, I was so embarrassed. We had to take commercial. And my daughter said, Mom, why are all these people on our plane? Well, if all she knows is taking a private jet, how would they know different? And so it is sometimes I do think, not boohoo, but it is a challenge, I would think,
It
for
is all
really
relative.
wealthy people to try to teach their kids, you know, like, you know, to make them really aware that what this is not normal, and, you know.
Yeah, and to not let them run amok.
Right.
Like I have a guy I went to college with, became extremely successful. He was a Goldman Sachs banker, retired in his early 40s, has all the money in the world. And his kids don't get shit till they're 50. 50.
Wow.
Because he's just like, I've seen what it does. It destroys people. And even Warren Buffett was just like, you know, I give them enough to do something. I don't give them enough to do nothing.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's very true. And then, but also then there's this other part of like people being, you know, rude about the fact that maybe your parents gave you a down payment for a house. And like, you know, I watch a lot of housewives and they're always like, your mom bought your house. And then someone said, well, don't we all want to get to a place that hopefully in 25 years that you could buy your 4-year-old a condo or give them a down payment? Isn't that what
Absolutely.
we want?
I'm rooting for those people.
Yeah, like, don't we want that? Why it shouldn't be a dig to someone that they do have some generational wealth, you know? I feel like it's like a weird flex to say like, oh, I was raised poor. I didn't come from anything.
Did you ever see that interview where Paris Hilton said, I had no idea I was rich until I went over to another kid's house?
Yeah.
Like she just didn't know because that was her frame of reference.
Right.
And I love her, and I root for everybody to be successful as long as they're a nice person.
And what's great about Paris too is that she came from all this and became famous, really the first type of person to be a real influencer or anything, but took it and, you know, did a million fragrances and a DJ and
Licensing
TV shows
deals
and
and a
all
race
this
team.
stuff. She didn't just, you know, try to marry the first rich guy at 21 and do nothing, you know? So it's like, it is really interesting. Okay, before we go, I want you to tell this Joan Rivers story because I love Joan Rivers and you photographed her. So what's the story there?
I love Joan. So I got a call. I think it was from one of Dita Von Teese's, who I've been working with for decades. One of her production people says, do you like Joan Rivers? I said, who doesn't like Joan Rivers? And they're like, do you want to do a shoot with her? And I was like, of course I want to do a shoot with her. When is it? And they're like, okay, well, there's going to be a camera crew there, so you might have to work around them. So I said, sure. So I was shooting at Pier 59 Studios. And And I was stoked. So I get to the studio, and I'm always early for shoots because I'm ADD and I just need to be alone and just stare at a blank stage before 100 people come in and ask me questions. So I'm sitting there, and I'm just there sitting my coffee, looking at this white psych, figuring out how I'm going to light her and what we're going to do. And all of a sudden I hear this unmistakable voice going, "What time Scott get here?" And I'm like, "I'm Scott." She goes, "You're always early?" "I'm always early." And I'm like, "Cool." She goes, "You want to have breakfast together?" I was like, "Yeah, of course." So we sit down and we're talking, and she goes, "Your work's very nice." And I said, "Thanks." She goes, "That's not why you're here." I said, "No." She goes, "This isn't even really a photo shoot." And I said, "What is it?" She goes, "We're shooting an episode of Joan and Melissa, and we get in a big fight, and it takes place behind the scenes of a photo shoot." And I said, "Okay, why me?" And she goes, "Because I hear you're Jewish and you're very funny." I said, "I'm funny. I'm not you funny." She goes, "Sweetheart, nobody's me funny," which is true. So we had the best time, and it was kind of like, Joan's the kind of person, there's nothing you could say to shock her. So we were almost having a contest to see how offensive we could be to each other. Like, and I could tell, like, some of the things we would say would, like, make Melissa just roll her eyes.
Right.
So, and we were just, like, winding each other up. So while we're shooting, she goes, "Hey, Scott." And I said, "Yeah, Joan." She goes, "Do your balls sag?" I said, "What?" And she goes, "What are you, deaf? I asked you a question. Do your balls sag?" I said, "Yeah, a lot more than they did when I was a teenager." She goes, "My vagina sags so much that this morning when I got out of bed, I stepped on it. It looked like I was wearing one of those big gray fuzzy rabbit slippers. And I literally had to hand someone my camera and walk away doubled over laughing." And and then she was just like, "Let's go fuck with the front desk lady." And I go, "Why?" She goes, "There's nothing else to do. Let's go fuck with the front desk lady." I go, "Okay, what are we going to do?" She goes, "Okay, I'm going to take my rollerboard, and you're going to just like be obsequious, and you're going to go, Miss Rivers, can I help you with anything?" And she goes, "And just improv the rest." I go, "Okay." So I'm walking behind her. She's just like walking with her shades on and her pashmina and her Birkin. And I go, Miss Rivers, can I help you?" And she just drops the Birkin, drops the rollerboard, and just walks out the door. And then we were like visibly upsetting Melissa. And I go, "Joan, what are you doing later?" She goes, "I'm not doing anything later. I'm just going to like go back to the room and order room service." I go, "That's what I was thinking." She goes, "What were you thinking?" I go, "Let's hang out tonight. Let's like order room service, take a bath." And Melissa's like, "Oh my God." And Joan, I know, we're just fucking with each other. And she goes, and she goes, "Scott, I'm too old for you." I'm like, "I don't think so. I think we're like soulmates and we're just kind of screwed by age. But I think you and I are supposed to be together." She's like, "I don't know." But there were so many things that happened.
She was so great. And like saying that she came early. I think you also said that she was like, and I remember this from her documentary, like, that happened right before she got back on E and all the success before the Joan Melissa show. And how she said, like, "I don't get any dates anymore. I have a blank calendar. It's all Kathy Griffin." That was the What a Face or whatever that documentary was. And so she said something to you about that.
Yeah, that was really good career advice. So she said to me, she was not afraid to ask an inappropriate question. So she said to me, she said, "Scott, what's the most money you ever made in a photo shoot?" Which is like, nobody asks anybody that. And I go, "What?" And she goes, "What, do you have shit in your ears? I asked you a question. What's the most money you ever made?" And I said, $85,000. And she goes, "That's a lot of fucking money. Who paid you that?" And I said, "Google." And she goes, "Oh." She goes, "Do you ever turn down work?" I said, "I do sometimes turn down work." And she said, "Don't ever do that." And I go, "Joan, sometimes there are shoots where what they're expecting exceeds the cost, where I can't afford the gear, I can't afford the location, I can't afford the insurance." She goes, "You figure it out, you take everything, you say no to nothing." She said, 3 years ago, I was playing shitty bars in casinos and everyone was talking and nobody was listening. And now I play the biggest rooms in the world." And she goes, "And you know what? 3 years from now, I could be back to playing those shitty bars. You figure it out. You say yes to everything. Your only enemy in this world is the white calendar," which was good advice.
Yeah.
And she goes, "How much are you getting paid to do this show?" And I said, she goes, "You're not getting paid
Zero.
anything."
Yeah.
And she goes, "Why?" And I was like, "Because I fucking love you. I've always loved you." And I didn't mention this in the TikTok, but I was like, "You're the first celebrity I ever met." She goes, "Get out of here." "Where?" And I said, read in the local newspaper in Wilmette, Illinois, that Joan Rivers was coming to sign autographs at a screening of Rabbit Test, which is a movie Joan directed way back when. So I said, so me and my friend Eli got on our Schwinn varsities and we rode our bicycles to the movie theater. She goes, you prick. I go, why are you calling me a prick? She goes, you rode your bicycle? You had to make me look 100 years old? And I'm like, well, you are older than me. And she goes, did that really happen? What was I wearing? I said, you were wearing this like luxurious camel hair coat and like a scarf. And she goes, I remember that coat. You were there.
Totally.
Yeah, and then she's like, repeat it on the thing, while they were
Yes.
taping the show. So I repeated. I was like, you're the first celebrity I ever met. And then she's like, how old were you? And I was like 11. And she goes, fuck off. And she walked away from me.
It's just, and the greatest work ethic and all of that. And
And
it's so great.
Oh, the other thing she
Yeah.
said to me, which I found out was a joke she'd used over and over, but all comedians
Yeah,
do
yeah,
that.
yeah.
We all like recycle our best material. But she said, Scout, you ever been to my apartment? I said, no, Joan, how would I have ever been to your apartment? She goes, you should come. It's nice. I said, yeah, what's it like? She's like, come for Passover. I go, what's your apartment like? She said, it's how Marie Antoinette would have lived if she had as much money as me. She's like, so great.
I know. And I love that she wasn't apologetic about liking the finer things in life and deserving them.
I also like that she never apologized.
Yeah.
Like if she said a joke, like she said a few jokes about some famous people I know that really hurt their feelings.
Oh, yeah.
But it's almost like the First Amendment. Like I defend their right to say it.
100%.
Like I don't agree with everything that Chappelle said about the whole Kanye thing.
Yeah.
But I defend his right to say it.
Yeah, absolutely. And
Because
it's
that's
like,
what jokes are.
yeah, it really is. And sometimes I asked Melissa, I go, how do you think she would have reacted to this huge change in our social what's okay from the last 10 years since she's passed? It's just like, and canceling people and not being able to say anything. And she's like, I think she would have loved it. Because she would have been like, come for me, because I'm not going to play this game.
She never backed down.
Yeah, of all of it. And she probably would have been like, I think she could have gotten away with it more than other people just because she always did. And she was older.
And she's the OG.
But yeah,
I'm so mad about, you saw the Tiger Woods thing that happened, right, at Riviera?
why did he
With the
hand
tampon.
But why did he hand that guy a tampon? They just were messing with each other?
Tiger Woods is famous for messing with people,
Okay.
farting in people's backswings, or they'd be walking down the fairway, he'd be like, here, can you hold this for me? And it'd be an empty candy wrapper. It's just, he's a frat boy at heart.
Okay.
So Tiger Woods is much older than, I think it was Justin Thomas.
Okay.
And the fact that Tiger outdrove his drive off the tee was calling him a bitch.
Right.
Like, I'm older than you. I hit the ball farther than you. Here's your tampon. Which is a legit joke.
Yes.
It shouldn't offend anybody.
Doesn't offend me.
And I was reading other women. No women were offended. No women golfers were offended. And I know he's got sponsors to take care of, but I would never, ever, I would have been like, I'm not apologizing for that joke. It's a legit joke. I handed him a tampon. If you don't think it's funny, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
But it was, I thought
Did
it
he
was funny.
have to say sorry?
He did a press conference and he says, I deeply apologize if anyone was offended. And I'm just like, the drugs and the cheating on your wives, I was fine with all that. You apologizing for the tampon joke?
Yeah.
I'm mad at you now.
Yeah, now I feel like that was not authentic because you don't feel that way, and it was funny. Wait, I want to show this one little bit of her. This is when you guys are doing the show.
What your look like lit. I'll put you on this box.
Okay, how is the lighting?
We're gonna get it dialed in. Let's sit right there. Is that comfortable for you?
Oh yeah, I can't wait. It's like Auschwitz. How comfortable can this be?
Cooper, Melissa, what your look like lit. I'll put you on this box.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for coming. This was
Thank
so
you.
fun.
Thank
You
you
have
for having me. I had
great
a
stories.
blast.
Tell everybody where they can follow you.
Instagram and TikTok, Scott Nathan Photo. Pre-orders for the book is baddecisionsbook.com, and you can get on the mailing list, and hopefully that's coming pretty soon.
I will definitely read it and then have you back again.
Thank you
for
so
when
much.
It's available.
I really appreciate you guys.
Thank you. This was great.
All right.